Hello, friends, and welcome back to Two Witch Isle, where here we speak about spirituality and mental health and how they work together. While my co host cracks up, we are your hosts. I am Charmaine.
And I am Krystle.
And today, on episode 12, believe it or not, we're going to talk about love languages. First of all, Crystal, do you have anything that you want to talk about first about love languages?
Well, I just want to point out that the concept of the five love languages actually originates from the author Gary Chapman, PhD, in his book, The Five Language. In his book, The Five Love Languages: The Secret to Love That Lasts. But most people automatically go, "Oh, this is for like a partnership in love relationship." But I believe that the love languages go across all relationships, your parents, so familial relationships, your friendships, as well as your partnerships or your lovers. So
Oh, you know what? You hit it on the nail. I was going to say that as well. Love languages is actually a concept based on Gary Chapman's book. And that's where I pulled kind of the definition of what love languages means was from that. And that the concept of love languages is to show couples how to give each other love in ways that is best received. But like you said, it's not just couples. I wouldn't say it's limited to just couples. If you believe spiritually that love is all around you, then every relationship has some type of love involved in it. And then in turn, when those relationships are taken from your life, you end up feeling loss and grief, which is also the that's just love having nowhere else to go. And that, you know, that transcends just the couple's relationship.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I tell my friends I love them all the time. I try very, very hard to see my friendships and to see the needs that are within those friendships and how those friendships, each one of them has their own way, uniqueness to them, right? So um they all have their own language that you speak. Not every relationship is the same. Just like not every partnership is the same, not every friendship is the same, not every familial relationship is the same. So we've got to learn how to communicate with each other, and one of those aspects of communication are how we receive love and how we give love, which are what the love languages are about.
Yep, that is exactly that's what we should roll into next are those five love languages. Those five love languages. There, that came out better. And what they actually mean. So, do you want to go through the love languages there, Crystal?
Yeah, well, let's just go ahead and just name them off right now.
Okay.
That way, and then we'll just come back to them. There's words of affirmation, there's quality time, acts of service, gifts, and physical touch.
Hmm. Yep. Um, and I will say, out of those five love languages, I pretty much could only do like two of them. And that's because I didn't feel worth words of affirmation. Those didn't work on me because I didn't believe anything that you would tell me that was good about me. Physical touch was really hard because of the nature of my abuse as a child. Or that's not the one I was going to say. Receiving gifts. There we go. Receiving gifts was really hard for me because I really didn't feel like I deserved anything. And that all came down to my own sense of self-love and self-respect. I had none. I was taught that if I had any, it was painful. So to survive, I kind of shut it off. And then all of a sudden, people are trying to use this towards me, and I couldn't accept it. It was hard. Um, Receiving gifts from my boyfriends that dated me, I didn't even feel like worth those. That was really difficult for me too. So, a trauma really like throws a monkey wrench in your ability to give and receive love.
Absolutely. That's like the biggest thing is like of why you need to learn what your the other person's love language is because of the fact that you know and they can tell you like you just have to pay attention to the cues that are given, right? Like if it's very obvious that I have handed my friend a gift and they're just like, "Oh, what do I do with this? How I don't know." Like it's probably going to be very obvious that it's awkward for them, in a sense. Um or if you're giving them like the words of affirmation and you're like, "Well, I see that you are so beautiful and you have such pretty eyes and I love your hair and all this," and those are all things that you have heard from someone else in a different way, and you have had that ingrained into you. "Well, my hair's not pretty." "Well, no, I don't have pretty eyes," those types of things. And then you're you're battling against the trauma of it.
Mhm.
For sure. Okay, so let's talk about the first one. Let's talk about quality time.
Okay.
How how is quality time expressed? Because it's not necessarily just it can be as simple as just sitting on the couch holding hands watching a movie together.
Mhm.
It could be going shopping with your girlfriends. It could be going on a trip and spending, a romantic weekend getaway in a cabin with your partner. There are a multitude of different ways that quality time can be spent, but it's about your attention being undivided and on that person. It is not having your cell phone in your face. It is not having distraction. It is not, it is not sitting there and watching the clock wondering how much longer this is going to take to reach the quota of quality time that's needed.
Right. A quality time, if you love somebody, it's not a chore to have some quality time with that person. It shouldn't be a chore. If it is a chore, you're gonna have to ask yourself, do you really love this person?
Hmm. Hmm. It's a chore for me sometimes, but a lot of the times that's because my energy doesn't mesh well with someone.
Oh, right. And you know what? It is true that, like I always like to say, I'm not everybody's cup of tea. I'm more like a shot of whiskey. And that goes to say with personalities, we're not meant to like everybody we're around. We're not meant to find love in the state we were born in the town we were born in. That is like not actually a typical thing. That's a very rare thing to find somebody that you love in high school and be married to them till the day you die. That's a rare find of love right there. Um, and not everybody attains something like that. I mean, thought that's how love actually worked. You got married out of high school to somebody you knew. And, I didn't follow that paradigm, of course. I went and traveled a little bit, but also hurried up and got married because that was what I thought that was supposed to be done. That's how you live life. You go out on your own, then you meet somebody, you get married, you have a kid, yeah, it was a docket for me until I realized that there are many paths to the same destination, and it does not have to look like everybody that came before. That it can look a multitude of different ways and still be okay. That everything is okay in the end if you can find your way around it.
Right. I mean, and we change so much that we have to be able to grow with our partners, because if we're not, then we grow apart. Friendships grow apart, families grow apart,
Right.
relationships with the
And
significant other
that's
grow apart.
And that's where that family time or that quality time comes into play big time, is that if you're not spending the quality time with your significant other, if it's a significant other, then you can't expect that relationship to grow together because you have to put in the effort and time into that relationship. Are you putting maybe more emphasis on your relationship needs for your friends rather than your spouse? Is that what's tearing your family apart? You never, like, until you peel yourself out of the situation and really take a bigger, broader look of it, you may not see the damage that you do to the relationship. You might only see the damage they do to the relationship. And in complaining about the same things over and over again, you're also, I mean, if your partner's refusing to change, you are also refusing to change. Both of you are refusing to change at that point. And at some point, one of you has to decide to change. That's just how that change works, depends on how that situation plays out.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, quality time is really, really, really important, because how do you even get to know somebody without quality time? That's, like, that's having conversations. That's, all of this, and which leads us into words of affirmation too.
Mhm. Yeah.
The quality time, I've like sat here and I've put these in an order to which I think they kind of like flow together, but
Mhm.
that's just me. And and so quality time is like, for me, is one. It doesn't mean that it's my most significant love language. And I want to put it out right there that everything that I've read tries to point towards one of these love languages is probably your strongest. But I'm like, I've got three. I'm odd. But like you said earlier, I think that we need all of them. It's in some capacity. And they're, like maybe one of them's like 50% of your love language, and the other ones, but they all come into play in some way or some form. Even if there's trauma involved with those, they still come into play at some point.
Agreed. Agreed.
Okay.
So which one were we going to next? Words of
I
affirmation?
think I think words of affirmation, yeah, because part of coming off of quality time is the conversations that you're having. And words of affirmation are not just, to me, are not just um it's not just I love you. It's
Right.
not just why I love you. It is things like, I really appreciate that you do this thing. I am grateful for you. There are a multitude of ways of affirming you did a great job. You took this project and you knocked it out of the park. If that
Right.
there's so many, whether it's written, whether it's spoken, but you language is how we communicate. So if you are showing someone affection and spending quality time with them, but your words don't match what you're saying, then you're failing on the words of affirmation part of the all the way
Agreed.
around.
I'm gonna take one tiny step back and also put in that under quality time, that doesn't mean quality time in the bedroom. That can mean quality time in the bedroom. However, you can spend quality time with friends. Like how I base my friendship scale is where I get quality time from my friends. Now, mind you, none of my friends live in the same state I do. So quality time from friends looks a little different than what it would if I still lived in my old house in Michigan, where I had a community of friends around that I had like a home base, if you will, with an outstretch, where now I'm still developing that because it's a lot harder for me to get out of the house. I just don't like it. Anyway, so quality time and then going to words of affirmation. Yeah, words of affirmation again isn't your just dripping, what do I like to think, Pepe Le Pew vibes of "You're so beautiful." Mwah, mwah, mwah. I need you. I love you. It isn't just that. It is also, you did a really great job on that, having friends that affirm what you're doing in your life, that remind you you're still doing good, even when you may feel like you are not doing anything at all. And that is very important, having people in your life that offer that to you. Now, when it becomes toxic, that's a whole nother story. You can't be living off of words of affirmation as the only thing that you need from other people, because then you start to come off a little narcissistic.
Yeah. And like whenever you're talking, like, there are words of affirmation that can go along with quality time with friends that you haven't seen in a while. Like, it's so good to see you. I've missed you. I'm so happy you're here. Like,
Hmm.
they're just affirming to them that you are happy to be where you are at the time you're there with them. That you're there with them because that's where you choose to be, and it makes you happy that you have chosen to be there with them. It's very easy to do words of affirmation on that. I mean, for me, words of I'm a big on words of affirmation. I like quality time, but I also can be alone. So that's not like my number one for sure, but um words of affirmation, I you would rather build somebody up than tear them down, or I would anyway. And I would
Absolutely.
rather be built up than torn down.
That the whole adage, treat people like you would want to be treated. That's where words of affirmation. Now, I could give words of affirmation all day because that's how I survived my trauma, was that I internalized it and I gave, I people pleased, I did what I could.
So you've been talking a lot about, and this makes me think of a point here, is that we didn't put in the fact that these love languages can actually also not only be for friendships, for familial relationships, or
Mhm.
partnerships, but we also need to point out that it also goes towards self.
Yes. Oh, absolutely.
Because you were just talking about words of affirmation and affirming things for yourself. Well, there's in spirituality, or there are affirmations. They're
Mhm.
literally I am statements. I am beautiful. I am love. I am whole. I am complete. Various, you can go down the line. You can do paragraphs of I am statements for affirmations as well.
Oh, I
I
have
am a
I
good
have a file.
mother, things like that. The things that just keep me, and I know you have a list. I have a list.
Well, you know what? That's just that little bit that reminds you every day when you start out that these are the things that you are. If you start the day knowing what you are, it is a lot easier to get through the challenges of the day, because even if you have to stop and go, "Oh my God, I am love. I am whole. I am worthy." If you have to stop and do that, sometimes you do, because you have to remind yourself that your thoughts and your emotions play little tricks on you, especially if you have a history of trauma, because your brain will be very quick to bring up, "Oh, this happened when you experienced that last, this happened." Well, that last might have been 60 years ago. It's still going to trigger that same feeling in your brain like it's happening all over again. And until you can get over those responses, you're not going to be able to fully accept yourself the way you are, which once you figure out how to love yourself, that is when you're going to find the person that loves you truly the way that you are, because otherwise there's always going to be conditions. It's always conditions. Conditions will pop up and it's like, no, no, this isn't love. Love doesn't have conditions.
Right. Love is completely unconditional.
Mhm.
Okay, so
So that was words of affirmation. What's the
yeah,
next one?
I say that, like, if we're going into what it leads into, right, is physical touch.
Okay.
So for me, particularly, I'm a very touchy-feely person. I hug my friends. I kiss my friends, not like on the lips, you know what I mean? And
Well, on the
I'm
lips, if they don't turn the right way, if you're
yeah,
both
that's happened.
mistakenly going to
Oh,
kiss on the cheek and then all of a sudden, whoops, it's happened to me. It's happened
yeah,
to me.
it does. But not a big deal. But physical touch is, I'm very tactile. Whenever I am in relationship partnership with someone, like whenever we're spending quality time together, I cuddling on the couch, hugging, kissing, any of those, I'm more likely to be like caressing you
Uh-huh.
somewhere. And I like my hair to be played with. I like to give touch and receive touch very much. That's my jam.
No, I totally get that. I am a very a touchy person now, but I wasn't always. I had to actually learn to enjoy touch again because and that came along in a particular relationship that just that was the only real communication was touch, and that kind of made me realize that that's a very big part of that loving communication. So but I had come to a place like in my marriage where physical touch repulsed me. I didn't want any of it, and that's just because there was too much resentment build up in that relationship that and then I didn't know how to handle it properly because I had no emotional intelligence. I was just flying off of my emotions, which just breeds disaster within a relationship. So physical touch, having to learn my way around that again has opened up a new love language to me, essentially. And, it doesn't have to be physical, like, it doesn't have to be sexual touch. Let me just say that.
Right.
Because there are friends that I will be snuggling with on the couch watching a horror movie or something, and they'll be like, caressing my arm or something and then telling me, "Oh, you have really soft skin." I hear that a lot. I'm used to it now. Even my mother has said it to me at one time that I have very soft skin and I'm easy to snuggle. So, I get that. But it can be between friends. It doesn't necessarily need to be in an intimate relationship, which is why these love languages apply to any relationship.
I can't tell you how many times that I have not even realized that I've done it. And I've been out with friends somewhere, and like I'll have find myself playing with my girlfriend's hair next to me, like just and then they'll just be like, "Oh," and I'm like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. No, 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 no. Keep going, keep going. You can play with my hair, play with," or like I'll be like rubbing them on the leg. I mean, that's just me. Don't sit
And
next to me if you don't want to be touched.
that's right. I know a few germaphobes that might have been like, "Ew."
Well, I I mean, like, obviously you can, there are subtle cues whether or not that kind of behavior is going to
Right.
be accepted.
Like, you
But
kinda you kinda know when you're hanging out with somebody, either you're a proper hangout with somebody or you're, like, sloppy hangout with somebody. I like my people sloppy because usually we've always been drinking. I don't drink as much anymore now, so I don't have or that need to be super sloppy like that, but I still snuggle, so I guess I still call it sloppy even though it's not sloppy. Drunk
we
sloppy.
snuggle. I mean, when we get together, we snuggle. So I don't know what to do,
Well,
Like, is that not normal? Is
I
that not what you do with your friends?
I think in sister circles, it's totally cool.
I think so. Yeah. Yeah. I totally do. But even some of my really, really good guy friends, like, there is nothing like a good hug from one of your guys.
Oh, yeah.
Just a good male hug does it for you every once in a while. Just
It doesn't
friendship,
even have to be a male hug. If you get
No.
a good hug, one of those 1 minute, 30-second hugs from somebody that you really care about, that you have a heart connection with, that can change your mood for a while, that kind of hug. Sometimes those kind of connections are necessary. It's kind of like, how you can be spread out from your family for years and then you meet for a family reunion and you hug that one aunt you haven't seen in forever. And it just makes you feel so good that you glow with almost that rejuvenated feeling. I've gotten that with friends, I've gotten that with family members. It's it's a great feeling, that feeling. And so, like I said, physical touch doesn't have to be a sexual touch. It can be as simple as a hug that somebody really needs. When somebody's really sad and grieving, doesn't that hug that lasts a little longer than a normal hug feel so much better than that hug that's just, the little quick go in? I mean, I know the power of a hug. So my friends know that when I see them after a long period of time and not seeing them, that hug is probably going to be uncomfortably long. But that's because I always say, give me a minute. My heart is speaking to your heart to heart right now. And I just need this minute for you to for it's not even for you to be in my light, it's for me to share my light with you, for you to be next to me and us sharing that connection. That's what that hug is about.
Right. I mean, and, like, this is a really, really good point on the hugging thing because that's, obviously very much physical touch. But I mean, like, I've read so much about just the power of a hug and what it can do for you mentally, what it can do for you physically, how it can make you feel. And then the longer that you hug, I can't remember how many minutes it says, like, to hug somebody. But if you can sit there and hug someone for a certain amount of time, how powerfully it can affect you. Um, there's with my children, especially my daughter, whenever she's, particularly upset and crying and needs a hug, I always hold her head to my heart as well. And there's something about, like, hugging and the heartbeat, and how you can literally regulate someone's heartbeat to yours just by hugging them. Same thing with
Yes.
horses, like, being in the vicinity of a horse, you can regulate your heartbeat. It's all
It's
about.
it's like that aura field. You've
Mhm.
stepped into the field of aura. I try to think of myself and my house its own little aura field. Like everything bounces off of an aura field around my property line because when I bless my house and then I bless my yard and then I bless all the way to the property line because that's kind of just how I feel. If I keep a bubble around me, then anybody who enters my bubble is entering my peace, which means they're entering my light and hopefully they walk away a little less burdened. Um, because, that's how I feel like sometimes some people are born with the capability of having that healing touch. And I feel like I have that to an extent, which is why my hugs are all so long. But I also try to extend that to my whole aura field so that, my aura field might at home, it's this giant aura field because it actually extends from my candle on my altar. You power up that candle, that powers up the house. The house powers, in turn, feeds you. You feed the house feeds the land in turn feeds the house and feeds you. That's kind of how I feel about my property and my land, which is why I spend a lot of time caring for it.
Yeah, I understand that. Like I'm in same thing. I definitely have been on a making my home an extension of my aura bit for a while, painting and new
Mhm.
flooring and redoing, the way things look and making it I've made my home soft.
Yes.
I mean, and then like that's the only way I can describe it is that physically to me, my house now feels like a home and my home feels soft.
Mhm.
And it's very,
And and that's what you need is a soft place to land, and that should be your home.
yes, absolutely. Okay. Next, are acts of service.
Okay.
Acts of service are things are like doing things that need to be done without being asked or sometimes being asked. But it's, it's doing something for someone to take a load off. Maybe it's bringing you soup when you're sick. Maybe it's making your coffee in the morning. Maybe it's making sure that the products that you need to bathe or just, your favorite foods are there and ready and waiting so that you don't have to go looking for them other than to walk to your pantry.
Mhm.
Maybe doing the dishes or mowing the lawn or taking on some of the burden. There's a lot of ways acts of service can be, and this isn't gift giving. This is doing something for someone with nothing in gain. This is, um, like you have to have, I think you have to have acts of service in every relationship, whether it's family, whether it's friendship, whether it's a partnership, whether it's your children. They all, I think, doing things for each other back and forth in a 50-50 type, not necessarily like it's always 50-50, but you know what I mean? Like the burden is shared is what acts of service say to me.
Right. I exactly. You said nothing in gain. You're getting nothing in return. You're just doing the service. When I was married, my ex-husband used to always put gas in the car for me. Like I never had to go to the gas station. Okay. He'd be like, "Oh, are you low on gas?" And I would say, "Oh, I'm about here." And then suddenly my gas tank would be full. He mowed the lawn, so I never had to think of the lawn care itself. And then I had a garden, and that was my little area to be responsible for. Um, there were acts of service there. Even though, our marriage may not have worked out, it doesn't mean that, there wasn't love at some point that attracted me to him. And I vividly remember these things because I didn't have to do them. And I think like not having to do something that I would on a normal basis if I was alone have to do. I became very dependent on those things that, I didn't even realize that they were acts of service that didn't realize it was part of a love language when I was younger because it was just something that naturally occurred once got married. Once I got married, I stopped putting gas in my tank. You end up forgetting that on a normal basis, if I was alone, I would have to do all these things alone, mow the lawn, take out the garbage, put gas in the car. All of these things I would have to do by myself. There isn't somebody to just pop in and put gas in my tank for me. There isn't somebody that buys me my favorite snack at the gas station while they're there and bring me a soda. No, I don't get any of that treatment. So if I want that treatment, how do I get it? Well, I either flat out tell somebody this is what I like, or, naturally I will end up finding somebody with my own love language if I treat my own self with the same love and respect that I would share with anybody else. I have to treat myself the same. Otherwise, it doesn't organically work that way. Acts of service, though, was a lot easier to do, people pleasing, but it became dangerous for me. So, I was people pleasing to a disservice to myself, which now I won't do because I've learned that much about myself that I cannot overtask myself with too many things to do. Otherwise, I get overwhelmed and I kind of shut down. So, to prevent that from happening, I kind of have to remember that, if I want to give love through acts of service to certain people, I have to be primed up and have enough energy in myself in order to do that. Otherwise, it's not as connective as I would like it to be for my friends.
Right. Like acts of service is definitely the love language of actions speak louder than words.
Mhm. Mhm.
It's once you've given it's proving that you are what you say you are too, in a
Yep.
sense. It is also the love language of people pleasers. It can
Mhm.
be very much because we've gotten that ingrained in our DNA that if we just take care of everything, every single one of these has a way, every single one of these love languages has a way that trauma can negatively affect them for sure.
Mhm.
Every single one of them.
Yep, absolutely. But yeah, that nothing to gain is the key there. Are you actually looking for something to boast about? Are you looking for, or are you just actually doing this out of the kindness of your heart and not expecting anything from it in return? That's kind of where that love comes into play. Because if you're just looking for a return, it's not really an act of service.
Right. Okay. How about the last, and it's not least, and I don't mean to put it that way. It's not, it's probably I'm gifts is the receiving gifts, giving gifts is a love language. I personally I don't want to say don't care for receiving gifts, but sometimes receiving gifts can make me extremely uncomfortable because I'm someone that prides myself on really putting thought into what I'm giving to someone. And so, I have when it's very, very obvious to me whenever someone is not as good at putting that thought process into what they're giving. But it doesn't even have to be as deep as all of that, like what you're getting for Christmas.
Mhm.
A gift can be it doesn't the gifts do not have to have a monetary value. It can be handmade. It could be that you went out into the field and picked some wildflowers. I love getting flowers. I don't know why anybody would ever think that I didn't, but I always get that. You don't even like flowers. What are you talking about? What girl doesn't like to get flowers? Are you serious? Like, but, gift giving is for me a trauma. I've experienced a lot of Christmases where, as a child, I was just like, why did I get this? And then I got in trouble, and
Oops.
everything always shows on my face. So gifting is difficult for me. I buy things or make things and not even realize that I'm doing it as an act of service. Because it's just like, well, I would think, but it comes along with I think my son would love this video game, or I think my daughter would love this horse thing, or, for myself, I don't even, I like flowers, but for myself, I'll buy myself like a potted plant for inside the house. you know,
Oh, I'm guilty of that.
how many is it now? 45?
I think 49. I potted some cuttings.
That's okay.
But no, gifts, I have never been good at receiving gifts. Uh, and it's always because, I remember being a kid and all of the focus being put on me as I had to open gifts, and they were watching for my reaction. What if I didn't react properly? Or, there were always these what if, what if, what if, and the holidays just made me uncomfortable in general. So I've just always held this great anxiety around birthdays and Christmas. And so that's why Halloween was always my favorite, because you could wear a mask and nobody could see your face. It's crazy how we come up with the reasons that we love the holiday. I was always trying to be the wallflower. I never wanted to be the center of attention. So Christmas and birthdays were extremely difficult for me. And and then getting gifts for no reason at all, that's even scarier. Like, I didn't handle it well. My husband brought me flowers once, shortly after we were married. He just came home with flowers and I made a joke. I said, "Oh, what did you cheat or something?" And I was told, "Well, fine, I will never get you flowers again." And he pretty much held true to that. He got me flowers when I had our firstborn child, maybe our second and third. I'm not positive. I don't think he sent the flowers, but I can't remember for certain. But, and then suddenly when we got divorced, I got tons of flowers. Well, at that point, it was just too late already. Yeah, I liked getting flowers, but I learned early on that if I made jokes about anybody's nicety, that I was going to get shunned from that nicety. So I took what I could get when I got it, and that was that. And, it kind of sucks looking in retrospect, because, man, I missed out on a lot of flowers. I see people get flowers and I go, "Oh, that makes my heart all smiley." I do get myself flowers sometimes. Actually, now I have a thing of stargazer lilies from my yard that are on my island right now that smells so freaking good. But, I do those things for myself now because, in order to bring something like that into my life, I have to be willing to do it for myself. If I'm not willing to do it for myself, even just to make myself feel good, not because I need a bouquet of flowers. Of course, I don't need to spend $14 at Walmart on a bouquet of flowers. But you know what? Sometimes I like to surprise myself with flowers.
Right, absolutely. And when you were talking and like about receiving gifts and having to have a certain look a certain way and have, I remember, what are you not, you were so ungrateful. Why are you so ungrateful?
Those things stick with you. Hearing
Yes.
stuff like that as a kid sticks with you for a very long time.
Yes. Very much. It really does. And I mean, I try so desperately hard not to have those kinds of statements come out of my mouth towards my children,
You're right.
because even to this day, because like now I'm like, I'm having to learn what gratitude feels like, because I've been told I was ungrateful how many times,
Right.
just because something that I didn't like, or if I didn't show the correct or appropriate response or emotion from what you think I should show. Now that has made me, you've told me I'm ungrateful. Thanks. So now I'm learning what gratitude is, how it feels to be grateful for something. Like, I get really emotional whenever I see my daughter doing really, really, really well in her horse riding, things. I mean, she's going to be in the on a show team now. She's doing so well, and every time I see her getting to experience things that I wish I could have experienced, and this is not, living vicariously through her. I am letting her make all of her own decisions and she's
Mhm.
going through all of this. But I can now understand what it feels like to be grateful to see something growing and be grateful for an experience, and which was, it can be taken from you as a child very, very, very easily.
Mhm.
And it's
Mhm.
why it's very important to have all of these love languages and know what they are, and be able to express them to your children.
And
And
it's not
as children,
only express them, but receive them as well.
yeah, absolutely.
Because
Absolutely.
remember, children mirror their parents. So if you're not good at it, your children are going to pick up those cues and behave accordingly to the way that you teach them. And I know I've taught my kids to be very uncomfortable at Christmas and birthdays because I can see it on them. And, I own that. I have done that, but now I'm trying to do better. And as I do better, I hope that they're still watching a little bit and they might pick up on it as well.
Yeah. And we all have our own things that we have to heal from. And like like you said, say it all the time, children are mimics. They mimic everything. I was a mimic as a child. I mimicked other children because I just, like, based on my experiences, I didn't know how to act around children. I had horrific experiences, as a child, and all of these other children around me didn't. And I mean, I'm sure they had their own,
Right.
degree of things, but I'm, I would do things that they were doing because that's what children were doing, not because
Hmm.
I knew that that's what I needed to do.
Right.
So these languages are really, really, really important. It's just important all the way around to know how the person that you are in relationship with needs to have access to your love. How do they need to receive it, and how are you capable of giving it?
Right. Because you'll meet somebody that maybe their maybe their only love language is physical touch, and maybe their love language is only sexual physical touch, and they have no other way to express to them the way they feel about you. That's probably a red flag right there. Most of us will not see it because of the chemical reaction of love itself, the falling in love part, where there is all of the attraction and the lust and none of the actual connection itself. But then you develop connection, and whether it's a strong connection or a loose connection, you want to believe the best in whoever you have selected. So you may overlook all of the red flags that keep coming up again and again in the name of what you believe they can become, what the potential is that you see there. But that's not how we actually love anybody. Love actually needs to be a little bit deeper than that. And there has to be an awareness there, which almost brings me to actually two different things, awareness of your actual needs and awareness of the type of love that you have experienced or you have been in or you are in right at this moment. Because if you think about it, there are types of love, and that maybe you're attempting a certain love language in a type of love that isn't going to grow from that particular love language. Does that make sense? Do you follow?
Mhm. Mhm.
So, like the types of love that there are, there's your first love, which is kind of like puppy love or a fairy tale love, where it's exactly what you dreamed your relationship would be like, the happily ever after. but it actually focuses on how other people perceive the us in that relationship. Nothing to do with the actual connection with the person itself. The second kind of love is the hard love, the love that teaches you a valuable lesson about yourself. And it's usually a cycle that will repeat again and again, but never resolves. That's a hard love. That's usually the second love. Then the third love is the love that nobody expects. It's going to surprise you. It'll be easy, but it is three things. It's not what you dreamed of. So it's not that first puppy love. It doesn't follow any rules that you have in your mind based on love. And they break all your notions of what great love should look like. And that's your third love. So I think it's really important to kind of know where you're at in that cycle. For me, definitely have had that first love. That puppy love is off the table. I had that dream whirlwind. This is perfect. That usually happens in high school. I would almost wager to say that that might have been actually my marriage. That second kind of love, that hard love, that actually might have fallen in my marriage a little bit too, but I have learned a lot about myself, and I can say that I have not been swept off of my feet by anything surprising. So right now, I think in the place that I'm at, I'm trying to learn to love myself the way that I love other people, because I've never loved myself the way that I have loved anybody in a relationship. Even the last sort of relationship that I I had way more love for that person than that person ever had for me. But I saw so much potential there that I just kept at it, even though it wasn't going to end in anything substantial that I was wanting a relationship to be. So I feel like that really taught me a lot about myself and about that cycle that just kept coming around and doing the same thing, but never changing. So I think I'm somewhere in between two and three. And that is putting in the focus on myself so that I can learn what it is that I'm looking for when it does come and knock me off my feet, because it's going to have to knock me off my feet for me to pay attention to it at this point.
I say I am the same as you. I am in between the two and the three. I am coming to realize that love chemical that gets produced, that butterfly effect feeling,
Oh yeah,
all
the
of those
feel goods.
things, I mean, those are all feel good things. Those are all chemicals that your body releases to, that are exciting and fearful, and they're, all of those things. But I kind of think that, though, in that third one that comes out of nowhere, that's just, it's more, those things, it's going to hit you out of nowhere because those things aren't as present, because those are chemical reactions that your body creates for, like, that's what's the word I'm looking for? It's ingrained in your DNA. That's biological. It's
Yeah.
biological. That's, your body's hormonal way of saying, like, oh, it's time to breed.
Mhm. Yep, exactly.
Like, it doesn't have anything to do with actual relationship. Actual relationship, that sweep you off your feet love, that comes out of nowhere, it's because you've built something with someone and you didn't even realize it was building.
Yeah, I also think it's a product of, if you've experienced a first love and a second love, then the third love is more of a product of your learning experience through those types of love, because they're hard and they end up being hard, and love shouldn't ever be hard. It should be very easy flowing. And if it's not, and if there's pressure, and if there's you doing things that you don't want to do just to keep a marriage together, that's not love. That's not love at all, because love would find the kindness in that. Love would see the struggle that you would be going through. Um, and I mean, I think that's what makes it so hard is that, we have this chemical reaction, but we don't really know it's just a chemical reaction until we've experienced it a few times. And then once we know, oh, okay, I see what's happening here.
It's almost a red flag.
Yeah, and I think the only way you're gonna get that is if you experience the other two, which means
Right.
you have to experience in the fullness, the highs of it and the lows of it, because everybody knows your first puppy love when you break up, it's the worst thing in the world. Mom, I'm gonna die.
Well, like, and that's like the whole thing is like you go into you've had those experiences of puppy love and that all consuming teach yourself about your self love. And
Mhm.
what you've done is you've learned from those two aspects. Well, they're learning experiences. That's the only way that you're going to be able to learn what you need from a relationship. And I think
Right.
that's why it sneaks up on you,
Yeah.
is because and and you wouldn't be still continuing on with someone if you if any of those red flags were getting thrown up for you.
Yeah, and honestly, nobody told me that I was going to fall in love more than one time. You think happens one time and then that's it. Like, oh, I fell in love, so this is it. But nobody tells you that that love might not last. That love might just be a chemical reaction. That love was a first love, but it didn't grow any further than that. And nobody really tells you about what happens when you lose those loves and you feel like your world just ended. I mean, they portray it in movies all the time, but you don't expect the real world aspect of it. Like nobody wants to feel uncomfortable. That's why. But when you feel uncomfortable, that's when you're actually growing and you need that as a human being. So, learning to embrace those uncomfortable feelings when, nobody told me that there's 3 loves. I didn't find that out until I was well into that second one, wondering why I was so miserable all the time. Well, there you go. That's it. That's the reason, because I'm learning something really big about myself that's going to set me up for that next step, which is that 3rd love. But you still have to go through the pain and the process of the others, which means you can't stop the pain or the process for your children. They have to go through it too. You can't be the almighty, "Oh, well, I will put a kibosh on that so none of that happens to them." No, because then you're all you're doing is trying to control their lives, which is something they've gotta learn and navigate themselves.
Right, absolutely. Okay, so then another thought that I had about all of this from the direction we've gone was the law of attraction.
Mhm.
So you've experienced love, 1 and 2, right? And then you are coming into the part where now we're going to experience love 3, or that love is the next thing that's on the horizon. How do you bring in the things that you want to bring in to your relationship? Well, you have to have those things for yourself. If you want a passionate relationship, you need to love yourself passionately. If you want to have a sexual relationship, that it looks a certain way, you have to bring that in for yourself. You have to know how to love your body. If you want a relationship full of physical touch, you have to be able to give it in order to receive it. If you want a relationship that is full of lots of quality time and words of affirmation, you got to be able to spend quality time with yourself. You've got to give yourself words of affirmation. So, all of these things, you have to be able, if there's something that you are looking for in your relationship, you have to be able to give it to yourself and to the other to be able to bring it in, because like attracts like.
Yep. Yep. It all comes down to, communicating and Something you said there, two things stood out to me, and I probably won't remember them both. But one, with the law of attraction and, the way that you treat yourself. If you treat yourself like an asshole, if you treat yourself like like a second class citizen, if you don't believe that you're worth buying a little extra something at the grocery store every now and then, if you're not compassionate to yourself, it's going to leak out into the rest of your life. If you can't show compassion to yourself, how are you going to be fully compassionate in a relationship? It's like they have to go in hand. And, you have to know all of the love languages so that you can see how you're treated by this other person and in turn reciprocate love the way that they can receive it. If you're trying to give somebody words of affirmation, but all they want is quality time and physical touch, you're going to be missing a mark.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like, we teach people how to treat us. I mean, that's right there from the get-go. So communication is so extremely important in relationship. Doesn't matter what kind of relationship, whether it's with yourself or it's with a lover, your family, a family, whoever, friendships, it does not matter.
Now, I also had a friend recently had sent me something that kind of applies to this when it comes to our love languages and our needs. And that's the basic human needs that people have, which are certainty, variety, significance, connection, growth, and contribution. There are six of these basic human needs that we need filled. The certainty is, of course, to feel safe, but you get that from words of affirmation, from physical touch, from quality time. That's where this need gets filled. Variety, that's in quality time, acts of service, receiving gifts. That's, the we have to, as humans, be able to exercise our emotional, psychological, mental, and physical range. And that is all part of that variety. Significance, we have to feel important, needed, and wanted in somebody's life. That goes right up to them love languages. That's how you make them feel wanted and significant. That connection, everybody needs to feel connection, whether it's an intimate love connection or it is a connection with a best friend that you have somebody to talk to when you have a need that needs to be filled. You need that connection, and everybody needs someone or something to connect to. Growth, all of humans need growth in every capacity, spiritually, intellectually, physically, and emotionally. And contribution, we have to be able to see that we're a part of something bigger, that we have a small part in a larger cog that makes the world go around. And we all do. I mean, I have favorite coffee mugs that I sip out of that people have given me from the past that I vividly remember them when I sip out of that mug. And, it allows me that feel of connection and contribution because I know I've given them a coffee mug that they're probably drinking out of right now.
Yeah, absolutely. All of those things are extremely important. It's like who- human beings are meant to be in connection with each other.
Yep.
I mean, 100%, like,
They
I
tell
mean,
you
that,
that in psychology, like in any group therapy setting. That's why there are group therapies. And especially for people with trauma, because that group allows them to see what other people experience, and you've all experienced something similar, even though your reactions may have varied a little bit. The experience itself, you see that you're not the only one. You are not the only human being with this problem, and that there are others out there, and you aren't alone. And that's a big part of that connection need right there.
Right. And the world right now, to me, is going through a massive shift
Oh God, is
where,
it ever?
ah, I mean, like, if you, of course, there's like I think that a lot of the darkness in the world is being brought to light. And that's why everything looks so much worse now, is that
Hmm.
all of the stuff is just being purged out of the system, as it were.
Yeah.
But we need togetherness and closeness more than we've ever needed it. That's one thing that the pandemic did that, was so detrimental to human psyche, was that it took us and separated us and told us that we were no longer allowed to touch, that we were no longer allowed to, see each other speak with masks. Or not that when, these things weren't necessary at the time, but it was very psychologically damaging to us as a society because of the connection that we need, and it was taken away.
Oh yes, for my own personal experience with it, it was like the world suddenly was in my boat. Like a whole world now feels the way I do about leaving the house. Everybody's anxious and scared about what's going to happen, about vaccines, about all of the unknown at that moment. And it was like suddenly my PTSD was worldwide. Everybody has it now. And we were all told to isolate, which for me, that was my go-to toxic trait, was isolating myself to my own detriment. And now we're being told we have to isolate, and I'm like, "Oh, thank God." It was a negative, but a positive in disguise, but still a negative. But it just meant that you had to find a different way to achieve that connection. I may not be able to get necessarily physical touch from all of my friends now, but at least I could have communication and quality time, and maybe a little act of service. I mean, I've had somebody send me food once when I was completely broke, or words of affirmation over a Zoom call, so that I can fill that connection need, even though it isn't necessarily the one that I want at that moment.
And that's what the love language are. They are literally communication. They
Hmm.
are literally connection. It
Wasn't that our
is
last show?
like, I mean, they all kind of tie together.
Right, right. They
And
do.
now I'm like, what do we talk about next time?
Okay. And awareness plays a big part here. If you're aware of which love you're in and you're aware of how they give love, I mean, that's really important, especially if you're sitting there going, there's just no love in this relationship. Is there? Take a little bit closer look. Maybe you need to take a step back and look at the broader description of what is going on. Like maybe you don't even notice that he goes and puts gas in your car for you without you asking. Maybe you have started to overlook your partner's love language. Is there a reason that's happening? Sometimes you can narrow it down to a reason. Sometimes it comes down to simple resentment. You've come to a place where you resent your partner so much that you can't see their love language anymore because it's just clearly not the one that you want. And it's a misfire. Sometimes people grow differently. We all grow, our growth rates are at different speeds. And if our growth isn't happening together because we're no longer spending any quality time together, it's he does his job, I do my job, and we don't meet in the middle until we're in the same bed sleeping, but that's the only time we get. Well, quality time as a love language is gone. Words of affirmation, physical touch, that's all gone. There's only two: receiving gifts and acts of service. And if you ain't getting any gifts, he isn't doing anything for you. Or maybe he is and you just can't see it because there's so many other holes. If you're not getting all of the love languages filled, your relationship probably isn't a great relationship. And then you'll have to look at whether it's toxic and needs to be left, or maybe it can be salvaged. And that's a total personal thing that
Right. And
that neither of us can help you with because it is very personal. The love languages that you speak and the love languages that your partner speak are totally personal to you.
right. And that's the whole thing is like, you can't expect the love language that you speak to be the love language that your partner receives.
Mhm.
Like, for example, like me, I'm not a gift person, but and acts of service to me even, are not high on the list. But if my partner's the way that he expresses love, or she, or whoever the relationship might be, um, is to give gifts and acts of service, I'm feeling left out because those are not necessarily what I need to feel loved. Like,
Mhm.
I can do acts of service as a love language. Like, maybe that's one way that I express love, but I may not necessarily receive it that way. Where I am would be more to be physical touch, right?
Mhm.
And my partner doesn't really understand physical touch as a love language. They see it more as a way to get stirred up and get a hard on and have sex.
Right. Yep.
Whereas that, again, intimacy to me is not sexual in nature always. It can be enhancing, but not it's not intimate to me.
Right. To me, the most intimate thing you could do with me is see me eat a meal because I don't eat in front of everybody. I have a really hard time eating in front of people. That was kind of like my control. That was the only thing I could control. So if I eat around you and I eat a lot, then I'm very comfortable around you because on a normal basis, my anxiety is peaked so high around new people that I may not be able to stomach even a small bite of food without needing to throw up. And that's just where my anxiety takes me. And so eating is a very, very personal thing for me. So to be in my presence and have me eat something, anything really, is it's like a big thing. People would make fun of it actually. Like I've had friends go, "Oh wow. Wow, you're going to eat today. Okay." I just was on a trip and my friend had noticed after I put down some food that, "Oh, hey, you ate." And I mean, you really ate. And it's just that's because that has been just a thing that has been it was so deep ingrained into my behavior that it was very hard to unstring it. And I still have my moments where, I struggle to eat, but I know now that if I'm having an anxious moment and I can't eat, I know it's because of my own anxiety. And it means that I am allowing my emotions to control my reaction. And that's not the way I want to live my life. I want to not react to every emotion that I have. So it's like really just slowing myself down, realizing, oh, hey, I am super anxious right now, but I can't eat like two more bites of that. If I just take two more bites and then let my stomach settle, I'll be good. And I can work my way through it. However, that hasn't been the norm for a long, long time. It wasn't until recently that I got that ability to get over that hump of being able to eat around people.
Yeah, I mean, like, and that's like, I've seen you eat. So I'll just put that out there. No, yeah, it's very important to recognize, and I think it all comes down to awareness, like you said, because being aware, like, I have the awareness to be able to tell that you look like you're not comfortable right now, you know? So it's like going out of your way to speak the language that your relationship requires is very important.
Yep. And every relationship requires a different type of attention to it. Like, I have relationships that I don't need to spend any attention on them. If they pop in out of the blue, we pick up like we never left each other's. And do you remember this? Do you remember? Oh, that was great times. Tell me what you're doing now. And it's like nothing is required for them to remain my friend that way. They may not be in the inner circle of my life where they know all of my highs and lows and what's going on the deeper level, but there that friendship is there and it exists. It doesn't have a string attached to it. It doesn't mean you have to be a politically affiliated this way. It is just that open-ended friendship. And being able to find those without self-sabotaging yourself is the key.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I've been doing a lot of soul searching on relationships, friendships, things like that. And I realized that over the last couple of years, I've gone very, 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 very down on the intimate relationships that I have. I feel like I have an intimate relationship with you.
Mhm.
I have an intimate relationship with my mom. But like, and I have a couple of guy friends that are there I have a very close relationship with, but I really like look at it and I'm like, I don't really I have good quality relationships now instead of a whole bunch of, like superficial relationships.
Quality over quantity.
Yes, very much.
And, that's super important though. It's the quality of your friends. I would rather have 100 friends that I could just pick up like nothing happened than have a bunch of friends that I have to be really careful and mindful about what I say to them because they might say it to somebody else who maybe doesn't need to hear that particular thing. Because, I'm very big on, if it's not kind, if it's not necessary, and if it's not truth, don't say it. And, it doesn't mean that I'm perfect and I do all those things. That is what I attempt to do. But I am no perfect human being. And I am still learning too. And that's going to lead me into my disclaimer, which is I am not a professional in the mental health field. I'm just a human speaking from my experiences as a human for 46 years on this earth. These are the things that I experienced in regards to love. And so this is kind of like my determination of where love goes, what love is about. And, like I said, I'm somewhere in between that second love and the third love, learning to love myself and learning how to love myself actively so that what I'm putting out now is self-love and self-respect, so that those people that push my boundaries won't have boundaries to push anymore. That those boundaries are up now and firm, and they're not going to get past any of those red flag avenues anymore because I've had very much experience in the hard love category. But that's where I am. I was married once, so I can speak a little bit on what marriage was like, but it is my personal experience. And I know that not everybody has the same personal experience that I had. I just know that there are a lot of people that do relate to this type of relationship where you get in it and then you get out of it and you're like, well, now what do I do? And you date, and everybody you date seems to have these red flags about them. And you realize, oh, some of these red flags are actually important, like jealousy. I never thought jealousy was that big of a deal until I was in a relationship with somebody who's really jealous. That changes your view on it a little bit.
Right?
Now I very much know what it is that I'm looking for, because what I'm looking for is what I would put into a relationship. So in order to get it, I have to put out that, which means I have to actively do things to love myself and respect myself above all others. Otherwise, other people are going to get these loose boundaries from me, and think that they can step on them and challenge my boundaries. And nope, some of those boundaries have to stay up for my own personal safety.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. And I think it's also very important too to note that the state that you are in right now, the person that you are right now is ever evolving and ever changing. So that also means that your relationships change and evolve. You've evolved and changed as a person. That means that your wants and that your needs have changed and evolved. So, like you've said, like you've had trauma, I've had trauma. And it's all stuff that stems around things that happen in childhood. And we had at one point in time an inability to accept a love language, gifts for one, words of affirmation, um, that and physical touch. Though those things are like hard for you, there some of those things are hard for me. But at one point in time, it was hard for you to accept those things, whereas now it's a little easier. So we are constantly evolving and constantly changing. So it's okay if something that worked for you before doesn't work for you now. That's a
Ex-
really, really important thing, I
Oh,
think.
that is so important for everybody to know, because that's exactly the nail on the head. It, it only matters with you what's going on. Everything else has to be aside. What my mother thinks about my relationship can't be a thing, because it's not her relationship. She's not a person over here with this person. She has nothing to do with the finances over here, anything. You power this relationship. She doesn't, and she shouldn't. And if she does, then that's a red flag in toxicity within the family.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
yes, absolutely. So important.
Okay, I think I have nothing left.
You've
I
you've
don't know if you do.
exhausted your notes, have you?
Yeah, I do that from
Well,
time
I
to
have
time.
now exhausted mine too,
Woohoo!
but I think we need to add in a little plug here about the event that we're planning in
Oh,
September.
yes. There's that. We are having To Which Isle presents a Harvest Moon retreat. And we're going to where in Florida?
We're going to be going to Palm Beach, Florida.
Yes. And we're going to have a night of fun where we're going to get dressed up and have a little party. We're going to do tarot and flower essences and raindrop therapy. We're going to have time on the beach. We're just going to have a general overall good time. I think it's going to be grand. I can't wait. I'm like, the ocean?
Yes.
Is
So
the ocean calling?
that's right. The ocean is calling us mermaids for sure. So yes, the event is going to be in September. It is going to be in Palm Beach, Florida. Jacksonville would be the nearest airport. Um, and let's see, I was going to add something. And of course, this is a small, intimate gathering. So there's only 4 slots available. So 4 people can come with us. There's just a base cost, and it will cover the Friday evening, the actually Friday, Saturday, and then a Sunday quick breakfast before heading out. And I do not have the dates in front of me because I don't have a calendar available, but I do believe it is the
Ninth.
9th, 10th, and 11th, or the
Yes.
10th, 11th, and the 12th.
I
I
think it was the
can't remember which.
9th, 10th, and 11th. Yeah.
I want to say it's the 9th, 10th, and 11th too.
And the 10th is a
Wanna s-
Saturday. So that's the full
yes.
moon.
Yes, that's right. And we've scheduled it right around the harvest moon so that we could call it a harvest event. So if you are interested in joining us, um, uh, contact us. You can either contact us directly if you know us directly. And if you don't and want to join, you can always hit us up on our website at towhichisle.com. And our email addresses are up there as well, Charmaine at towhichild.com and Krystle at towhichild.com. You can also hit us up on our Facebook page, and you can find us on YouTube or Buzzsprout, wherever podcasts are found. I can't even say that right. Like, how does that even roll off the tongue right? I'm going to have to fix that sentence.
And we are doing we're going to do a live recording of a podcast at the event.
Yes, that event
Talking
will
about
actually,
rituals.
that's right. We're going to do the podcast on that Saturday evening over rituals. And so if you have something you want to add, something you want to be there, something you want to offer as well. If you are interested in attending our Harvest Moon event, it will be $250. The flat rate gets you just the weekend. It covers your room and board and food and beach fun and all of that stuff. So, if you are interested, please do let us know.
And we have a house that has access to the beach.
Yes.
That's
Yes,
the good part.
indeedy. That
Right
was
on
the
the beach.
key. That was key in picking the place. So, if you're interested in joining us, please let us know. We can't wait to have this event, even if we are the only ones at it.
If
C'est
we
la
are, we
vie.
are. If we are, we are. And then we will just have all the fun ourselves.
So we will be putting that up on our Facebook page and our website here shortly with this podcast. Let's see. And we have to do the last part of the plug. Like, take
Oh.
what resonates with you and
And
leave
leave
the
the rest.
rest. Look, I said it right again.
Yay. Go you.
All right.
We're so awkward.
You know what? So everybody has a little bit of awkward in them, and
Exactly.
we're just brave enough to go ahead and be it.
Embrace it. Embrace your awkward. That
That's
should be a
right.
t-shirt.
Well, you know what? If you love the weird in you, you're going to end up attracting the right weird to you. So be in love with the weird that you are, because we should all have a little weird. That's human nature.
Absolutely.
So here's to being human.
Woohoo! Yay.
All right. Well, that finishes up our 12th podcast on, oh shit, what was this on? Our 12th podcast on love languages. Yes, on love languages.
Yes. That right there. Love languages.
So go ahead and give us a like. We don't know what we're talking about. Go ahead, give us a like. Anyway, that finishes us up. We hope that you join us next time on To Which Isle.
Goodbye. Light and love.
I love it.